Check democracynow.org.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. As always, I want to begin by expressing just a lot of gratitude to my colleagues, the team at KFAI. What a powerful and wonderful station, program, experience. What a powerful and wonderful collection of thinkers and doers and lovers of music, lovers of information. What a powerful demonstration of community. And so I begin with just an expression of gratitude. That expression of gratitude extends to you, dear listeners, the fans and supporters and community of this experience, KFAI. We used to call it a different radio station every hour. Why? Because so many different people from so many backgrounds, so many parts of the community were invited, were welcomed, and championed, lifted up in bringing their authenticity, their voices to their own community, but in a way that shared their visions, their versions with the rest of the world. I say that's powerful. That's wonderful. And again, kudos to KFAI. I was this morning listening to some of our old shows. I have CDs from 2002 and 2006 interviews I've done. And as I look back, man, I'm blowing my own mind because we've done such amazing and wonderful work just in connecting and bringing people forward in the community. One of the things I listened to particularly today was an interview that I did with my brother, Wayne McFarlane. And I'm going to be sending that back to our production team and asking if we can break out parts of it because it's a very intimate interview at the Marcus Garvey House, me and Wayne on camera and for the broadcast, and me asking Wayne about his story. As you recall, I think last week, a week before last, I did a tribute to Wayne for his birthday and read a piece. I call it a piece. I wouldn't call it a poem, but read a piece in tribute to him that made reference to his beginning and his discovery or coming to his own awareness of his role as a musician and as a messenger. And it's a story about us being in a Pentecostal church in Kansas way back when we were kids. He may be 3 or 4 years old, me maybe 7, I guess, 7 or 8. And I this morning was watching a videotape of the interview about that particular story and reviewing it with Wayne. It was just wonderful listening to me and Wayne together talk about that on a previous broadcast of this show, Conversations with Al McFarlane. And that one probably was something done maybe in I didn't remember the date, but in the first decade, so over 10 years ago. Well, listen, we've got a great program today. I'm pleased to have as my first guest, Emerald Garner. Before I introduce her to you, I want to bring in my colleague and partner, my writing partner, Brenda Lyle-Gray, who's with me every day from the mountains of New Mexico. Brenda, how you doing, my friend?
I'm fine. Beautiful weather outside. Loving this fall.
It's beautiful here as well. You know, it's supposed to get cold in a couple of days, but you know, this is Minnesota, so we know what's going to happen. The answer is get ready for a rich and wonderful winter because it's coming, right? So
but that's okay. We enjoyed the change of seasons in Kansas City.
We did.
It. I just hated being rolled down Brooklyn Park's hills by your cousin in the middle of the snow, but otherwise beautiful times.
Well, for anybody that's not in on the inside story here, let me tell you that my writing partner, Brenda Lyle-Gray, who co-hosts this with me every day, and I are kindergarten classmates. We were in kindergarten together at age 5 in Kansas City, Missouri, and we lived in the same neighborhood, went to the same grade school and junior high. I think I left and went to a different high school, but we've got a history that I think is important. And one of the values of this conversation is the chance for the two of us now, both 75, able to put in context a lifetime of watching, of doing, of being activists, of being workers, of challenging and fighting. I call us both coming out of a revolutionary spirit. We've been civically engaged from the get. We were raised to be activists and to raise our voices, and that is what we have done. And that's what we continue to do today. Well, that's a wonderful way to bring in our first guest, and that's Emerald Garner. Emerald Garner, welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Good morning.
Good
How are
afternoon.
you?
Where are you? Are you
Good
out east or out
afternoon.
west?
Sorry, I've been saying good morning and I've been in interviews all
All
day.
day, huh? Okay. Listen, let me hold your book up, even though we're doing live radio, but we're also doing live to social media. Just so you know, we are streaming to KFAI's website, kfai.org, also streaming to the Facebook and YouTube pages of the Black Press of America, Black Press USA, and that's the online expression of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. And we're streaming to our Twitter, our Facebook, our what else? And LinkedIn pages as well. So we're trying to use all of the strategies and platforms we can to create conversation, to spread the message. And I tell you, you have a powerful and wonderful message to spread. Let me just read off of the back to introduce you to our listeners here on KFAI and those who are watching on social media. Uh, the top part is a quote from Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It says, quote, Emerald Garner has fought tirelessly for justice for her father, Eric Garner. Her story is one that needs to be heard. That's from Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. And the first paragraph by introduction says that, this is the liner notes on the back, in this unforgettable memoir, Emerald Garner recounts her father's cruel and unjust murder, the immense pain that followed, the pressures of an exploitative media, and her difficult yet determined journey as an activist against police violence. She begins with the morning of July 17th, 2014, a rare day off from work, one she had hoped to enjoy with rest and family that quickly turned her world inside out. This is a personal account of the suffering that she and her family endured. And so that's what this book is about. I want to invite all of you to, is it published yet or on the way out?
Yes, it just was published October 4th.
Okay.
And I would drive everybody towards Barnes and Noble so I can make the New York Times bestseller list.
Certainly can. Certainly can. We'll go to Barnes and Noble
Barnes and
and pick the
Noble.
book up. Yeah, great. You know, and I've done a cursory read, which means I'll go back and do a deep, detailed read. But what I read, I was both impressed with your voice and your passion, the story that you're telling, but also how you are telling your story and why you are telling your story. So I want to stop there and just have you start off with, what is motivating you, what the story, what's the drive, the passion, and the purpose of being very public and in an arena that really is built on pain and trauma.
Thank you. I always let people know I'm a part of a club that I didn't ask for an application for. And, being a part of this club, it's a journey. And through my book, I expressed my mental health issues, the issues that, happened from the date of July 17th up until now. And the reason why I decided to highlight it is because, 3 years after my father, I lost my sister. So I always say that she didn't survive this movement, and she wasn't handled with the best care, and neither were we. So we had to start demanding things like, I'm just not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that, or I'm busy, or I have to deal with the children. So after my sister died, I took her kids, so I had to take a real step back and get myself together so that I could be strong for them.
I have a photograph. I'm not sure if this is your sister or not. Let me pull this picture up. Is that your
No,
family?
that's Monet. That's my co-author.
Okay, and who's the other person I have? I have one more picture. We'll put it up. And that's probably a co-author as well. Is that
Yes, co-author Tom Thomas.
great?
Yes.
We'll talk about them. Thank you. And thank you for talking about your sister, and sorry for that loss as well. What about trauma in our
Mm.
community? And what have you learned? You laid it out. You were so unprepared and so unaware of the massive impact that trauma brought to your life. Talk about that, if you would.
Going through this journey and, following the leadership of Reverend Sharpton and getting to travel around and see the effort and the dedication that goes into supporting a family that's affected by police violence or state violence. It takes a lot, and I'm pretty sure that trauma for people show up in different ways. So it could show up depressive. You could be very low. You could be very high. You could be anxious. You could be it could be a lot of things. And for me, it showed up as anger. Like, I'm angry. I want to know what happened. I want to know why. But I didn't watch the video. I watched the video 5 years later. So when we talk about trauma, it was just like I was re-traumatized after the initial viral clip that went out or whatever. But after seeing the full video in the courtroom with the police officer, I was like, I can see why my sister lost it, plain and simple. And it was just it was such a tragedy. And I was like, our story is not like everybody else's story. Our story is very unique because, my sister died with no prior heart health issues. So it was just like trauma after trauma after trauma. And then I have to prepare myself to raise the two children.
Stress and heartbreak.
I was getting ready to say
Go ahead,
heartbreak.
Brenda.
Yeah.
Take a minute, Emerald, if you would, and tell what happened to your dad in your words.
I just say he was targeted and he lost his life to a senseless action that day.
And he was actually murdered by a uniformed policeman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And after 5 years, the officer was finally fired. But what happened to him after that?
He went into hiding and he's spending his retirement money and whatever money he's made in overtime, and he will never have to work a day in his life ever again.
Mm-hmm. And so he's this is the cynic in me speaking, reaping the rewards of murdering your father, of killing your father. Yeah. And I think it's your voice and the voice of others like you, the club you say you didn't seek to become a member of, but that club now is in fact making changes in the country and in the world. Do you see it that way? That's how I see it, but I'm going to ask you, how do you see it?
I don't think I'll ever get to a part where I say I'm fully healed, but I say that I'm on this healing journey because I do feel like my voice is being heard. That's why I said I found my voice, and the way that people react to me telling my story is a different feeling. And I feel like this book could definitely help people to not have so much anxiety, to not to pace yourself, to understand that this is going to be your lifelong story. For somebody, this is their story for now, but for us, this is our story forever. So just pace yourself. And I always use the example of when the federal government's decided not to indict, and I had this big blow up in front of the courthouse, and I'm going off and it went viral. Excuse me. And everybody said that is your coming to activist moment. And I said that's a mental health breakdown. That was a cry for help. And you don't know what somebody's going through until they blow up. Mm-hmm. So that's I always use that as an example that you can't just keep poking poking the bear. You can't just keep stirring the pot, and then, you know, people don't understand the long-term effects that it has on us as people trying to get back to everyday life.
You write in the book that you and your father were often or sometimes at conflict. But beneath that, and besides that, when this thing began to unfold, you were anxious because you wanted to get to the hospital, and you were thinking as you took 2 trains and a bus, and were trying to find the last leg to the hospital, but you couldn't find it in time. But your thoughts were that I got to get to see him because, despite the arguments we both have had, I love him. Talk about that. What that
You know, people go through stuff,
it
and
came
you know, I
across
was
as being
rebellious.
very frantic
Right.
and believable. I mean, I was hearing you when I was reading your account. So talk about
Thank
it if you
you.
would.
Yeah, it was just like one of those things where it's like saying goodbye became very important after my father died. And, you know, like you don't realize how important that is until somebody dies tragically. You know, when somebody has cancer or when somebody has, you know, a long-term illness or something like that, you know, it's you get the time and you know that this is what you're gonna do. Like, you know, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do this. But this was so unexpected. And it's just one of those things where it was just like, okay, I just want to get to last say my last thing. And then after my sister passed away, well, before she passed away, she was in a coma. So the last time I saw her was probably a couple of weeks before when I picked up my niece. She had just had the baby, and you know, my daughter's birthday was in November, so I went to go see her. And then fast forward to December because people are so busy. We're so busy. I got to work. I got to do this. I got to go to this interview. I have to go to that interview. That we're not really paying attention. And then the next time I saw, she was in a coma and she didn't wake up. So it was just, you know, that's why I touched on talking about my grandmother, from my mom's side, my mother's mother, who wasn't really in the media like that. She was, you know, she was a star of her own. So she, you know, she didn't want to be in the media. But I took care of her towards the end of her life, and she had dementia. And I did get to say goodbye. I was sitting right there when she walked over into her glory. So, you know, for me, closure was a lot. And I see that, you know, I didn't get that with my father. I didn't get that with my sister. But then when I got it with my grandmother, I was just like, it's a little bit different when you get to say goodbye.
This question of trauma and the question of healing, I heard you say you're not fully healed. Where does that sit with you now? How do you see yourself on the journey and the path toward healing? I read that you felt some healing as you were able to interact and speak to young people in particular, that was one of the places you found some internal, a movement that was healing of you. Where are you now? And talk about that process of what was the immediate challenge, and then how you were able to move in a way towards the progress of healing.
I always say I like to talk to the young people because they're the next generation. And for me, in my household, we didn't talk a lot about, you know, the Sojourner Truths and go into Malcolm X and do all that stuff. You know, that just didn't come up. But I really do think that it's important to tell our Black history, especially because of what happened to me. Like I had to really like relearn a lot of things. I went to New York Department of Education for school. Like, you know, we didn't take out Black history, so you know, I knew a lot of the things, but I didn't know how important it was until,
It
unfortunately,
wasn't personal
until
to you.
this. Right. It wasn't important. It was, I mean, it wasn't personal. And, you know, it wasn't something that, you know, was in the front of my mind. Like, yes, I wore my hoodie for Trayvon Martin. Yes, you know, I knew about Rodney King. I knew about all these things. But before that, I had never been to a march or a protest or, you know, seen anything outside of maybe a civil rights movie. So for me, it was a different experience. And then to actually fall under the leadership of somebody who was actually there and fighting with the people that I read about and have read about. And he being one of the people that, you know, one of the pillars in the community, and then meeting other leaders in the community. It was a great experience to know that you have this leadership that's supporting you.
You're talking about Reverend Al Sharpton, and you give just a lot of praise and props to Reverend Sharpton for being a genuine and consistent supporter of you. And I think by extension, you're saying that's how he is. And that's how his family is. They are for real. And you, in the process, provide testimony to counter all that negativity that comes up in our community all the time. We got a habit, right,
Yes, and
of
they don't
dissing each
understand
other
how
and
frustrating
denying
it
each
is for
other
me.
and blasting each other, even for no reason. We just somehow have been acculturated to be destructive in our attitude and approach to each other. And you have, in a sense, I believe in this book, and from what you've talked about, come up and set the record straight.
Absolutely. Because I would just get questions like, "Oh, does Reverend Sharpton really perm his hair?" And I'm just like, "Do you know that I just lost my father on national television, and I'm never coming back from that, and I'm always going to see that, and it's going to replay in my mind, and I'm going crazy because of it." So, like, oh, he's doing this, or oh, he's doing that, and I'm just like, "Oh, doesn't he owe taxes and all this other stuff?" I was like, "Well, first of all, this story came out before I was even born. Let's remember that. Like, and do you really think that I'm sitting here talking to this man about his hair and his taxes? I'm talking to him about how I'm going to get justice for my father." So for you to even approach me like that is just like, I don't care if that's what you want to know. He got Keeping It Real with Reverend Sharpton. He has his radio show. He has all of these opportunities for people to ask him questions. Don't come to me and ask me those questions because they're dumb. Ask me what's really done in the community. Ask me who's really stood by us in this community. After my sister died, I didn't get a lot of help. I'm going from one child to 3 kids, and I had a full-time job working with ACS, still trying to be an activist, still trying to figure out what's going to be my business so that I can leave this 9 to 5, so I have more time with my children. So I don't have time to play games with people. I don't have time to focus on the negative because it's been way too much negativity going on in my life. There's been way too much trauma happening. It's been way too much nonsense. And this cop is never going to jail. So if you're not coming to me with a strategy on how this cop is going to go to jail, I don't want to hear it.
Imra, you know what Sharpton did for us, I think, was when he did the eulogy for George Floyd, and he said, "Get your foot off my neck." And that phrase was like, it just penetrated through the Black community because your foot has been on our neck for so long, and it's really bad now. And if we don't step out and have a voice like you have had, we're going to be sitting in the same spot. We were out there on the front line. Our parents were out there on the front line. You were going to hear us. And we mentioned at the first of the show of Al's cousin, who we, all grew up with. He was sort of the opposite because he was so powerful that when Bernard walked in a room, it was silent. But there were no, it was no misunderstanding where he came from, which was the same place of Sharpton. Get your foot off our necks and let us live. So bravo to you, Imran. I wished I had time to read all the books I wanted to, but I have a tough boss and I'm writing all the time. But congratulations.
Well, you'll read this book and you'll enjoy it. It's
Thank
really
you.
a good book. It's well done. I like the strategy. Not only do you tell your story, but you share interviews you did with a bunch of people. And the interviews are a wonderful tool and technique for not only getting your own voice out, but getting feedback real time from people that matter to you. Talk about that strategy. How did you decide to do that? Well, let me tell you what I remember. I remember that in preparing for some work, the first interview here is the one with, let me see, I've got the book, the New York legislator.
Elizabeth Warren.
And you said that in order to sort of get Brian Benjamin, right? Brian Benjamin.
Oh, Brian Benjamin. Yes.
Brian Benjamin. You said in order to, and you were about to go onto a journey of creating legislation, a movement to support legislation. And in order to be prepared, you wanted to connect with him, sort of to sharpen your ideas and get his knowledge and etc. And I thought what you captured that interview and published it, but it was a marvelous technique. So talk about how you decided to do that strategy and what it ended up with you doing interviews with several people, telling that exchange between you.
I think that it came about because I wanted to do the podcast. And they were like, Emma, you're writing the book and you're doing the podcast, and the podcast is not really getting a lot of attention. So I was like, you know what? I want to put my interviews in the book because, Atan was like, we should put the interviews in there. He's like, we should pull the really strong interviews. So I selected the interviews that I wanted to put in, the ones that resonated with me, that made the most impact on me. So my interview with Brian Benjamin is very sentimental to me because he really supported, he really showed up. He was really boots on the ground. And then my interview with Angelique Kierce and Laura Dean King and all of the survivors, it meant a lot for me because for Laura, I told her, I said, I don't know what my story would be if my father would have survived. And I feel like you have the true survivor story because your dad survived and you got to experience him before the trauma and after the trauma. And I think that that's very unique in her story. So I definitely wanted to highlight that. And I'm just like, they're not saying what I need them to say. I need them to say, like, listen, this is something that's real. They had to live through this as young kids into adulthood. They had to go through this. They had to actually have those, they had to have those real moments with their dad. And then, he passed away after that. So I was just so compelled to tell everybody's story because I wanted my story to be told as well. And I know what that feels like to not be heard.
Mm-hmm. Who were those two pictures we looked at before? One was...
Yes, my co-authors. I shout out to them. Thank you so much, Atan Thomas, who is former Washington Wizards basketball player, NBA player. Sorry, I said NBA player. And wonderful person. I met him in 2015. And he is an athlete activist. And he has several books. And I kind of modeled the book a little bit after what he did with his interviews, and he interviewed me for his book. So when he signed on to do the book, I was super excited. And then Monet, she is an artist. She is someone who's known me since I was young. So I felt okay with being vulnerable with her and telling the story. So shout out to my co-authors. They did amazing.
What's the power of telling this story for you personally? I'm imagining that you are really being proactive in seeking and causing your own healing by engaging, connecting, sharing, telling the story. But that's my words. What are your words? What's this mean to you in your own words?
It means hope for other people. When I meet a lot of survivors, the first thing they express is hopelessness, anxiety, the feeling of being alone, not being heard. People, they come out when the cameras are here, but then when the cameras go away, there's no support for my everyday life. There's no support for those times when I'm up in the middle of the night. So I want this book to be a support, to find your support system. And sometimes you have to heal yourself. You have to stop looking for healing in other people. And I used to look for healing in other people because I'm like, you guys have been in this. You guys are activists. You should have the answers. You should know what I need. You should know all of these things. And the reality is that they didn't. So I had to figure out what it was for me. And I want to figure out what that is for other people going through it like me, so they don't lose their lives to broken hearts the way my sister did.
I think you have to leave in about 2 or 3 minutes. I want to thank you so much for being with us. You had a chance, and the book has an essay, a closing essay by the daughter of Malcolm X. It's the afterword by Iyasha Shabazz. Talk about that for a minute. Why did you choose that, and how do you feel about what she said? I read that first. Then
I wanted it to be the forward, so
okay.
They didn't hear me. They weren't listening to my voice. Yeah. No, but they put it as the afterword. I think it was really strategic as they put it as the afterword, because she had action items. She had a direct action. Like, this is what I need you guys to do, because these are the things that that are important right now. So I think that it was beautifully worded. I think that she is amazing. She is her and her sisters. You know, I got to experience her and Mahala at the National Action Network and their beautiful spirits and fights like just fireballs, and I just love it. She came to speak at an event that I was at, that I did for my father, memorial for my father. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I was just blown away. And then when she came back with her afterward, which was supposed to be a forward, I was just so emotional. I was just like, thank you. Like you wrapped up everything that I was trying to say in the book, and you actually gave an action for people to do. And that was the best. That was the best part for me.
Have you been to
Emerald,
Minneapolis
which daughter was this?
This is Malcolm
This is
X's daughter.
Ilyasha, Malcolm X's daughter.
Yeah, but which one of the? I think
the
it's
one with the
five.
glasses. So she's the one that has the curly hair with the glasses. And then he has another daughter with the locks.
Okay.
And his other daughter passed away recently. So not the one that has the locks. That's Mahala. I'm sorry if I pronounced her name wrong. And then Ilyasha is. I'm not sure which place she is. I think she's the oldest. I'm not sure the eldest.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you been to Minneapolis yet?
No, my mom has.
Okay. Well, if you come here, look us up, okay?
I definitely will, and I will definitely sign your book.
Let me close with the last two paragraphs. I'll read them, or if you would, why don't you read them? You have your book handy there?
Yes, and I'm not even gonna lie, the smoke alarm is gonna go off.
Okay.
So I think you should read it, and then I'm gonna mute my microphone because the smoke alarm goes off every day at 2:35.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Well, listen, let me read it, and this will be the end of our interview, but thank you so much. I want to share this. She says, our goal must be shared, our plans must be strategic, and our people must be disciplined and selfless. Eric Garner and his family have given us an example on how to live in such a way. They are doing the work, weekly meetings, advocacy, sign-up sheets, and forming agendas. We must join them and continue to join them in, as my father said in 1965, declaring our right on this earth to be a human being, to be respected as human beings, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day and age. This is our way forward together by any means necessary. The book,
Wow.
Finding My Voice, the author, Emerald Garner. Emerald, thank you so very, very much.
So nice
Blessings to
meeting you.
Thank you.
And success in all of your work, all of your life. Keep fighting.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed. Thank you so much.
All righty. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. What a wonderful book and a wonderful interview. My gratitude to her. Thanks to her. You know, I can't imagine, I can only imagine the weight of a child having to relive the trauma of the murder of her father for the rest of her life. For the rest of her life. And so all I can do is acknowledge and be empathetic and to get busy, to do the work as is being requested to change our society and our circumstances so that our lives that are valued by us and by everybody in the world. So look, let me continue. I'm going to change pace here a little bit and talk to my next guest. I've got Jim Brunzell here. Jim Brunzell, good afternoon. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you, Al?
Thanks good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad you're here. So let's talk about films. You're doing the what's it called? The film festival. Let me get the right name for it.
It's called Sound Unseen.
Sound Unseen. Thank you. I'm having a senior moment here.
It's okay.
Listen, so let's have you talk about Sound Unseen and let people know about it and what and where and the whys.
Sure. So Sound Unseen has been in the Twin Cities, or Minneapolis specifically, since 1999. And I've been a part of it since 2008, but it was started by a group of film enthusiasts, music enthusiasts that were involved with Minnesota Film Arts and the U Film Society and the Bell Auditorium, and Oak Street Cinema. And they saw that there was a lot of these music films that were sort of playing at other festivals in other cities, and they weren't coming to town. They weren't coming to the Twin Cities. And so this group sort of reached out and sort of started underground in the early get-go of bringing these films to town. And year after year after year, it's grown, and it's become, you know, quite a big regional festival. And yeah, as I mentioned, I started in 2008. I took over as festival director in 2012. And I accepted a job in Austin, Texas in 2014. So I moved there, and I was simultaneously still doing sound and scene. And what happened was in 2020, as we all know, the pandemic came, and, you know, we couldn't go anywhere. We were sheltered in place. And, you know, the first big major film festival to basically cancel because of the pandemic was South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. And, you know, I knew I wasn't coming back to Minneapolis just because of the precautions and safety. So we thought, well, why don't we open up Sound and Scene to Texas? And so in 2020, we launched our virtual festival of Minneapolis and Austin, Texas, or, you know, I guess Minnesota and Texas. And so we are doing this festival now in both Minneapolis and Austin. I don't know why I agreed to do this, Al, but here we are. And, you know, this is our 23rd year now in Minneapolis, and it starts November 9th through November 13th. And we are at, I want to say 5 or 6 different venues, the Parkway Theater, Bryant Lake Bowl, the Trilon Cinema, St. Anthony, Maine, or the Maine Cinema, the VFW in Uptown. So, you know, we're sort of spread out all over the Twin Cities and Minneapolis specifically, but, you know, it is a labor of love, and we have a really small, dedicated volunteer crew that work on this year round. And yeah, the festival's coming up.
Let me read from your bio, just information that I think is interesting and cool, that you can respond to or, you know, build out. It says that during your tenure, the festival has been named one of the 25 coolest film festivals in the world, that by Movie Maker magazine in 2016 and 2019, and as one of the 20 great first-time Movie Maker Festival in 2022. That's currently. Then you were the program and artistic director for the All Genders, Lifestyles, and Identities Film Festival in Austin, Texas from 2014 to 2020. In 2016, you were named by the Austin Chronicle as one of the top 10 local queer heroes. As the Chronicle said, it says a lot when an ally makes the list, but as program director, he has done a bang-up job curating the film festival and screenings for the entire LGBTQ spectrum. It goes on to say that from May 21 through March of 22, you were the interim executive director of the Oxford Film Festival, based in Oxford, Mississippi. You've served on numerous film festival juries, and you're a big sports nerd, a diehard Minnesota Vikings fan, and a Los Angeles Dodgers fan as well. And apparently you're dad to a 4-year-old tabby cat named Bruce. Interessante. Interesting. So listen, as what's going on, where are we going in film? What power are we exploring and experiencing in film, in entertainment, not only in this country, but globally? When you sit back and think about the impact of the industry, of the genre on humanity, what do you think about? What goes on in your own mind?
Ooh, that's a big question. I'll see what I can muster up here. But no, I mean, I think, look, I got into all this in 2004 because as a young child, I was interested in the moving picture and films. And, you know, at a young age, I wanted to be a film critic. And I got to do that in the Twin Cities through Twin Cities Daily Planet and through a couple other publications. But, you know, I could sort of see the writing on the wall even when it came to print journalism. And you saw a lot of film critics and journalism that were in print weekly or daily, and suddenly that went online. And, the transformation of that really, there was a parting of the sea almost, where a lot of outlets, a lot of newspapers, alt weeklies, they sort of just shuttered, canceled. A lot of people lost their jobs. And this is sort of what's happening now in the film industry.
Mhm.
And, whether if we want to thank the pandemic for this or not, that's, I guess, anyone's own decision to decide. But what happened was a lot of the studios and a lot of the smaller niche sort of distributors decided, well, we need to get these films out, but people aren't going to the movie theaters right now. So let's just make them readily accessible on streaming platforms like Netflix or Amazon or Apple TV or what, there's so many now, but, Netflix really started something that has now grown, obviously global. And, film festivals, especially regional festivals like Sound Unseen, are trying to figure out what are the next steps? Where do we go? How do we move forward? And, these are conversations that we've been having for a long time, and, it changes every year. And something that we looked at was, obviously we couldn't be in person in 2020, and last year we were in person. And we had a hybrid, part where we did offer virtual screenings, and we're going to be doing that again this year for our 23rd annual festival. But I think the bigger question that you're asking is, where is our audience?
Mhm.
How do we get people to come back to the theater? Because movies are meant to be in, a big space, dark lights, projector, and a big screen. And a lot of people are content staying at home and having sort of that on-demand, experience, or watching things when it's convenient to them. Or, if something's in a theater right now, but 2 or 3 weeks down the road, they'll just, they want to wait until Netflix. They want to wait until Amazon to watch it. And, I'm not gonna be the person that changes that person's mind, how they watch it, when they watch it. But I think the experience that they would have at Sound and Scene, they're not going to have at home. We are bringing in close to 30 filmmakers for 47 films that we're showing. Now, if people want to, not come to the festival and wait until these films come out at a later time, that's their choice, of course. But, it's going to be a different experience. And, as someone who travels to, a lot of festivals worldwide, there is an uptick now of people going back into the theater because they miss that experience. They miss that communal experience of being together, to watching something and experiencing together, and then leaving the theater and having conversations with it. When you watch something at home, you're either moving on to the next thing, you're getting ready for bed, you're getting ready for dinner, you're getting ready for work, whatever the case may be. So you just, it's a solitary experience. So with Sound and Scene, we really want it to be a festival where people are coming together to engage and be part of the festival with us.
That gets to kind of like medium as message moment, where this conversation, your answers and my questions have to do not only with the mechanics of creating community for the sake of sharing and ingesting this artwork, but the other part is the part that I'm asking about, Jim, and that is shifts, movement in content, and what kinds of content are being created now differently, and what kinds of impacts are observable, not only at a given site, but around the world. I'm glad you mentioned that you've been doing festivals around the world, because I think that the storytelling represented by films, right,
Mhm.
is absolutely the shaper of society, and in a sense, the creator of options for the future. What do you think about that? Am I far off in my thinking, or is that something that we have to and should be more conscious of?
I mean, I think I hate to sort of go right down the middle, but I think you bring up, two solid points in the sense that, yeah, it's going to ultimately to be decided on how the distributors or how the filmmakers are going to move forward with their art, with their film. Every filmmaker and artist wants something to be made so other people can experience it, so they can be there. They're not making these films or, writing books as your previous guests to just have them sit there on the counter or, collect dust. So they want people to experience them with other people. That's the whole idea. But, a lot of these deals that are getting done through distributors and filmmakers, they're smaller windows. as far as the big screen experience. So you might have movies opening up this Friday that, you know, might be streaming 3-4 weeks from now, or it might be on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, the fact is, a filmmaker at the end of the day knows that that film, if it's, you know, if it's a bigger studio film, they know an audience is going to see it. But I think if they had their, you know, their choice, they would prefer that people go see it in the theater, because that's how they meant it to. They're not making films so you can watch them, you know, on your TV. I mean, yes, there's longevity, there's history, or on their phone, or on their computer, you know. I mean, look, and yeah, I mean, even 5 years ago, we might have had this conversation in person, and now we're over, you know, like a Zoom type platform. So the industry changes as it dictates. But, you know, it is a lot of determination of these studios, these filmmakers, and how they want, you know, their films to get out there. And with our lineup, we were very conscious of the films that we, you know, sort of went after, or films that were submitted to us or that I saw at other festivals, well knowing you cannot watch this anywhere else but at Sound and Scene in person. Now, at a later time, you might be able to catch that. But the idea is, if you want to see it now with everyone else, you have to come and see it at a screening.
Okay. That's the value proposition for the opportunity at hand. Content-wise, how do you describe the difference in stories being told today and stories that you grew up with when you were a kid, here in the early part of your life? What's different, if anything?
Well, I mean, with age, you know, your tastes shift, right? You know, when you're 10 years old, you love something. When you're 20 years old, you want to, you know, you want to bury that. You want to put it away. You want nothing of it. Or you love something from the moment that you discover it, and you continue to, you know, have that with you the rest of your life. And that's sort of the feeling that I have with films, is just, I care about great stories. And, you know, that is something that is important to all of us. We're always interested in knowing more about a story, whether if it, you know, where it starts, the middle, where it's going, how it ends, you know. And that is something that's great about a lot of films, is, you know, there's just a bevy of content out there, so much worldwide, global, not just.
So my question is, I'm asking, to sort of picking your brain on what you perceived to have been the stories, the big stories.
Okay.
When you were a kid, you know, when you were just a bicycle kid, right? Ice cream kid, right? What were the big stories? What was the world story that you grew up on and in and around, that you saw yourself as part of or admired because you were in a theater watching the big screen? And so, in a sense, that's how you came to understand and assemble the world. It's one of the ways that you put it all together. You could see it on a big picture. That the screen becomes a screen for your mind, I think, and puts you in the picture, right? And so then that's kind of what I mean. If you said, you know, when I was 3 or 5 or 7, you know, well, for me, I'll tell you what, it was the Little Rascals. When I was Brenda and I are 75 years old, so we go back a little bit, right? But for me, when I was a kid, it was the Little Rascals, and it might have been Hop Along Cassidy.
I was getting ready to say the Lone Ranger and Tonto.
I mean, that was the world for us, right? And so we grew through that and out of that, and we grew to where we became critics of it because we had more knowledge. And then we have watched representation shift over the decades. And the shift that we watch, I'll speak for me, I think for Brenda as well, is a shift that allows our people to see our voices where our voices had not been seen before, had not been permitted before, and had been actively suppressed before. That there was a machinery in place in culture and society, the social structure, that with intent and in an institutional way maintained a marginalization of our existence as human beings. And so that's what we grew up seeing and fighting. And our mission has been to destroy it, to dismantle it, and to be part of opening a path towards freedom. So that's how I look at it. Brenda might see it somewhat differently, but I think we're on the same page in general. And so I'm asking you the same thing from your lens as a kid in Minnesota. What's the big story when you're 5? And what's the big story when you're a teenager? And what's the big story in terms of what it means for how the world itself operates? That's an easy question.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess the short answer is I grew up on Disney films. You know, my mom loved Walt Disney films and the cartoons, and you know, so watching Robin Hood and Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I mean, that was stuff I grew up on. You know, but then obviously as you get older, your tastes, you know, they change. And you know, I remember at a very young age, probably right when it came out on VHS, I remember seeing Stand By Me, and you know, as a 7-8-year-old, in a way, it was sort of refreshing to see that because it felt like it was something, you know, different to me, even though it was about these 4 boys that were searching for a dead body. I don't know if my parents knew that that was the movie it was about, and it was based off a Stephen King book, but that was something at a very young age I saw, that I just knew that there was a bigger world out there. And, you know, I mean, with a lot of artists, filmmaking is, you know, telling your story, your background, how, you know, where you grew up. You know, there is a lot of films now that it's just, you're so inundated, you know, on a weekly basis. Growing up, you know, you had 2 options of what was opening at the theater. Now you have anywhere between 25 to 40 films opening up. So it's just, you know, you have to look for a common ground. And when you run a music film festival, we understand that a lot of people like all different types of music. But because we run on a year-to-year basis, we program, we select, we curate, you know, for the widest audience that we can get. And we are looking for proper representation. I think that's important, you know, moving forward, and to, you know, highlight these artists that are, you know, first-time filmmakers or ones that have been making films for 25 years, because they change from their first film to their 5th film as well. They're not always constantly staying the same. So, you know, I think it is something where, yeah, I mean, I have my own personal taste, but then I also have tastes that work well within the festival, because everyone loves music. But when you ask people what type of music that they generally enjoy the most, they're going to give you a thoughtful answer versus just saying, oh, I love all types of music. You know, like I love all types of films, but more recently, I'm more interested in documentary films because I want to learn new stories, you know, by filmmakers in the Philippines or in Iran or, you know, the Middle East and Europe. And, you know, because I want to know what's going on in the world. Now, I mean, if I want to sit back and just sort of, you know, watch something entertaining, of course, I'm interested in, you know, bigger studio films as well. So, but I would say as I've gotten older, yeah, I've graduated from Walt Disney to more serious, you know, news informative type documentaries. But that, you know, that's not to say that's for everyone.
You know, Sidney Poitier did it for me with To Sir with Love. And I think I went around for years singing that song, because here you had this gorgeous Black man who is in a country that I had never visited, with students who ended up loving him so much as a human being and someone who gave them something that they had never had. And they saw the world in a different light. And it was something about that film. Plus, I was an educator, and his relationship with his kids, with his students, and he taught them so much about life. I'd like to see a lot more To Sir with Love's out. But, you know, there's a lot on TV. Abbott Elementary is really quite a show for young people to watch. I mean, I'm so glad she got the Emmy. She deserved it. But and I used to show Boston Public to my kids. You know, I had seniors in high school, and the way I wanted them to see a film of what they lived every day. When I wanted to show the kids what apartheid was, the real nuts and bolts, of course, I showed Cry Freedom. And, you know, it was something about, and a lot of people say African American students are visual. And maybe that has to do a lot with historical, that we were not able to read and write for so long. But, you know, it's interesting. Both of my daughters are in film, and you know, they've hit some roadblocks as Black females. But then I heard the director Gina Prince when she said, you know, they told me I wasn't good enough to go to UCLA Film School. And so she broke that barrier. And, you know, Love and Basketball is a classic now. And it was turned down by 15 or 20 studios. So, you know, it's an interesting industry, Jim. And I think you're on to something, because everything we've gone through for the past 2.5 years, we need music. We need things to lift our spirits. I can still see West Side Story the first time I saw it, and I was dancing around like I had lost my mind, but I was Maria for a while, you know. So I was just a chocolate one. But anyway, interesting information. You're going to have me going back doing some digging on your work.
Yeah. So
Sure.
name some of the shows that are coming up. Which ones do you recommend? I know you recommend them all, but we got 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah. I'm interested in your personal preferences and what you're going to tell your best friends to go check out and not miss.
Okay.
Which is everything,
Well,
but there's got to be, you know.
He always puts
okay.
he puts you on the spot.
Yeah, no, of course. But no, I'll tie this into sort of, you know, tangentially, you know, the conversation that we're having. I do remember my parents sitting down, my sister and I, and us watching Roots as a family together. And that was very impactful. And, you know, that was LeVar Burton, who then went on to, you know, even bigger things with Reading Rainbow and PBS and Star Trek. And we have a doc in the festival this year called Butterfly in the Sky, which is about the history of Reading Rainbow. And LeVar Burton is front and center in this film, even though, you know, I mean, on the surface, it's not technically like a music film, but it is an art film. It's an educational film. It is, you know, a generational film for people that grew up with Reading Rainbow, like myself, and, you know, recognize who LeVar Burton was in the 80s and 90s. You know, but the music hook to this is that, you know, they discuss with the composer of the Reading Rainbow theme and how he created it. And that's something that, you know, who knew that I needed that information, but I was so thrilled that they brought that up in this documentary. So something like Butterfly in the Sky, I think, is something that's also family friendly, which a lot of our films are more, you know, adult content just due to, you know, the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll nature of the music industry. So it's nice to have something that is uplifting and educational and that you can bring your family to. So I guess I would recommend Butterfly in the Sky. You know, we have this great local film by Don Mickelson and Carrie Pickett called Finding Her Beat, which is about taiko drumming. And it is a local story that's based in Minneapolis on the Taiko Arts Midwest. And it's a film that just had its world premiere at Mill Valley, which is a very respectable, you know, top tier festival out in California 2 days ago. And we're fortunate enough to hold the Minnesota premiere of that. And we're going to have taiko drummers in front of the screening perform, and then it's going to lead into, you know, the screening of the film, and then a Q&A by Marianne Combs, who's a very respected journalist and, you know, former radio DJ. So, I mean, these are 2 films that are documentaries that do sort of highlight underrepresented, you know, communities and filmmakers. And it's just something that, you know, I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of by going to these films, and then also learning about the other films that we're showing that are, you know, heavy on rock and roll and punk rock, and, you know, but we do have jazz films. We have a doc on Nan Goldin, who's an artist from the 60s and 70s called All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, which is the gold. It won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival this year in September. It's the first time in its 79-year history that a documentary film has won the Golden Lion. So it's a very significant film. It's one that's going to be talked about at the Oscars coming up. So we're very fortunate to show all the beauty in the bloodshed. But, we have a lot of great music films and short films and music videos in the program.
Jim, we're out of time. Thank you so much. Good luck with the festival. For information, people should do what?
They should go to our website, soundunseen.com. And then we are on the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And Al and Brenda, thank you for the time today. It was a great conversation.
Well,
So good
likewise.
meeting
Thank
you, Jim.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.